Greetings and welcome to the Petersburg Borough Assembly meeting for May 18th, 2020. I would now like to turn the call over to Mayor Mark Jensen. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Dave. With that being said, we'll now call the meeting to order. It's the regular meeting on May 18th, 6 p.m. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Jeff?
Here.
Jay?
Here.
Taylor?
Here.
Chelsea? Here. Mark?
Here.
Bob?
Here.
Brandy? Here. Thank you.
Okay, we have a full assembly this evening. And just for the people listening on the radio, if you're interested to call in and give testimony in this evening's meeting, the number you need to use is 800-954-0633. So with that being said, it's now time for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, there are no minutes for approval this evening. So that brings us to item 4, which is amendment and approval of this evening's meeting agenda. If there are no amendments, I would entertain a motion to approve the meeting as presented.
So moved. Mr. Mayor, I have an amendment or an addition I'd like to put to the agenda. I assume there was a second there.
I'm not sure, but let's see if we get a second to your, what is your motion, Member Lynn?
Okay, my motion is I'd like to add a discussion topic related to the CARES Act and funding of nonprofits, particularly daycare centers, at the end in the assembly discussion items.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion's been made by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Tremblay. Any discussion on the proposed amendment? Hearing none, will the clerk call the roll on the amendment to the agenda? Are all those in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we will add that. And Debbie, please remind me of that addition when we get to the discussion item. And that brings us back to approval of the meeting agenda as amended. Is there any other amendments this evening? Will the clerk call the roll?
Yes. Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move forward with the meeting agenda as amended with that one addition under discussion items. That brings us to item 5 this evening, and that is public hearings. And I will open the first public hearing for ordinance 2020-14. This is an ordinance amending chapter 4.24, property tax, to change the payment due date for property taxes. So I would ask Dave, our operator, is there anyone on the line, Dave?
There is indeed, Mayor.
There is? Can you... And I guess we just need to find out if there's anybody on the line that would be willing to participate in the 3 public hearings this evening.
Yeah, so what it looks like to me, Mayor Jensen, and Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but the people that I see waiting to speak are actually waiting to speak under persons to be heard.
Okay, that would be nice if there was a way to identify that. But if that's, I'm not hearing anybody I'm assuming they're listening on the radio that wants to participate in this public hearing. So if there are no calls of people wanting to participate in this public hearing, the first public hearing is now closed. That brings us to the second public hearing. This is for ordinance 2020-15. This ordinance is for adopting the budget for the fiscal year July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. And it's a little bit difficult not seeing if the people on the phone can put their hand up, but it doesn't seem like, it's just like the clerk said, they're probably waiting to testify under items related or unrelated. So with that being said, this public hearing is also now closed. To bring us to the third and final public hearing this evening, and that is on ordinance 2020-16. This is an ordinance amending Title II, Elections, of the Petersburg Borough Code to provide an election by mail at the discretion of the Assembly. And this would be only if deemed necessary if we are still socially distancing at that given time. And once again, it doesn't appear like there are any people trying to call in to testify to this public hearing either. So this public hearing on ordinance 2020-16 is also now closed. And so that brings us to bid awards. There are no bid awards this evening. And so that brings us to item 7, and that's persons to be heard related to items on today's agenda. So Dave, we'll see if any of the callers would like to participate to this item. And just for a little info, Dave, how many people are on the line?
We have a dozen connected.
A dozen. Okay.
Mayor Jensen, it's actually not a dozen for speaking, however. For speaking, I see 1, 2, 3. Right now I see 4 people that want to speak. And Dave, could you please clarify, I guess, those that want to speak, if they just hit the 1 and then the 4 button, it will show that they want to speak. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
Okay, people listening, could you please follow the clerk's directions and press 1 and 4, I believe she said, if you want to speak. And also, Debbie, do you see the list of names so you could call them out? Or should we just take the first caller in line that dialed in? I don't know what you're seeing on your end.
I do see the list of names, and that's how I've done it in the past, so I would be happy to do it that way if you would prefer.
I think that would be cleaner. So thank you. This is on persons to be heard related to items on today's agenda. So I will mute and let you take over.
Okay, thank you. Dave, would you please unmute Blake Biot, please? Oh, did Blake stand up? Oh, there we go.
Can you hear me?
Oh, we got you. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Mayor and members of the Assembly. My name is Blake Biot. I have been a member of this community going on 33 years and a borough employee going on 9 years. I'm also the Vice President for the Petersburg Municipal Employees Association, as well as the Water Treatment Operator for the Petersburg Borough. I'm speaking tonight to voice my support for the extension of our contract with a 2% wage increase for all of our hardworking members. Our employees are key to the well-being of our community. The public services we provide and continue to maintain during this COVID-19 crisis are critical to the health and success of Petersburg. Extending our contract will help maintain a good working relationship between the borough management and its employees. And a 2% wage increase will go a long way in showing the borough management's appreciation and support for all of our PMEA employees who are working on the front lines daily, who show up no matter what the current situation is. our members take their jobs and commitment to the people of this town seriously and continue to help better this community daily. Many of us have had to take on more work, schedule changes, and other challenges because of this COVID crisis that we're all in together. Extending the current contract will help labor and management keep services running smoothly and allow us breathing room to plan for the future ahead. I want to thank the Borough for their excellent leadership and support through this crisis. As we move forward with our new norm, we can do this together. I want to thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Biot. Dave, if you could please allow Cammie Gillen to speak next.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we've got you, Cammie.
Hi, everyone. Okay. Hello, Mr. Mayor and the Borough Assembly. As you know, I'm Cammie Gillen. I've lived here almost my whole life. I've been an employee for the Finance Department for almost 8 years, as well as a member of the Petersburg Municipal Employees Association just as long. I am here as a representative for PMEA to also ask you to extend our contract and approve the 2% wage increase proposal. First, on behalf of myself and the other PMEA members, I want to thank you for serving on the Assembly and for giving me this opportunity to speak. During this COVID-19 pandemic, we as a union also want to thank our leadership within the Borough for their support and guidance through the evolving information and circumstances. The Borough has worked really hard to keep us informed and keep us all safe, and for that we are all really extremely grateful. Countless employees have had to adjust their jobs to accommodate safety guidelines and limitations. Several people are having to do jobs they didn't originally sign on to do, but have gladly adapted to be able to stay working. We've all had to make changes in our daily lives, our work environments, and routines. Thankfully, this crisis has been a positive experience for us because of the partnership between the employees and our Borough management. Extending our current contract with the wage increase will help the Borough and the union maintain critical Borough services, much like Blake said. This will help maintain the hard-earned positive relationships between our association and management, as well as recognize our members for their loyalty and hard work during this difficult time. This measure would demonstrate to the Borough and our members that we're all working together for the best interest of Petersburg. Extending our contract with the wage increase would allow everyone a brief respite, extending some negotiations as we adapt to the present and plan for the future, instead of making rushed and tough decisions without the full budget picture. In addition to the positive benefits of extending our contract, the proposed 2% increase is not out of the ordinary realm for contract wage increases. As a matter of fact, in the last contract, it was agreed upon for a 1% increase each year. Prior to this was a contract where the first year was 0, followed by a 1%, and followed by a 2% wage increase. This agreed-upon wage increase is a step forward towards keeping our loyal and long-time employees who have established a life here in Petersburg and invested so much time into our borough with their hard work. Thank you for your time and consideration on this matter.
Thank you, Ms. Gillen. Dave, if you could please allow Mike Olivo, I hope I said that correct, to speak.
And Mike Olivo's line is open. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Hello, Mayor, members of the Assembly. I'm here representing American Cruise Lines. We have our planned intention to return to cruising this summer. Obviously, we have the concerns of COVID-19 at the forefront of our operating process. We'd like to be heard among the community so that we can demonstrate our commitment to providing a healthy and safe cruise for not only our guests and our crew, but the communities that we visit. We have sent an extensive operating plan of how we will continue to run our cruise operations amid the COVID-19 pandemic. We're hoping that we have the opportunity to support our intent to return this summer for our trips, hopefully beginning in the end of June and continuing through September. We'd be happy to meet with anyone within the community, whether that's the emergency operations or health coordinated manager. We'd be happy to set up meetings with them to either fully explain our plan or answer any questions that may have not been covered in the presentation that we submitted. If there's anything that American Cruise Lines can do to show our commitment to operating safely, we just hope we have the opportunity to do so.
Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Olivo. Dave, if you could please allow, let's see, Tom Abbott next.
Tom Abbott's line is open.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and the members of the Assembly. I'm Tom Abbott, the station manager of KFSK community radio station here in Petersburg. I wanted to call, I already submitted a letter, I believe it may be in your packet for this meeting. A letter of thank you. I want to appreciate the finance director and the borough manager for, again, including KFSK in the community services grant of the borough operating budget. So, again, thank you for being included in the budget. I am hoping that as you move forward through the budget process that you could perhaps consider reinstating the funds for the full request that I had requested for the radio station, which helps fund the services that we provide to the borough government and the borough citizens through emergency situations and the only source of daily news and coverage of borough happenings in the borough. So, again, I just want to say thank you for including KFSK in your budget. And if, as you go through the process, if you can find any funds to restore the amount that was requested in the grant request, I appreciate it. And thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Dave, if you could please unmute David Berg.
David Berg's line is open.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Assembly members. I'm David Berg, owner of Viking Travel here in Petersburg. I'll speak to the health mandate number 5 for cruise ships. We're in favor of oversight by the Borough to keep the community safe from infection and having regulations in place with the requirements of the mission and local approval of operational plans is important. Cruise lines are preparing plans and practices to keep their ships, crew, passengers, and the communities they visit safe from harm. As we begin to transform to some sense of normalcy, we as a local operator of activities for visitors are also looking at ways we can protect the community. We plan to use masks, the frequent cleaning of our vehicles and hands.
Mr. Berg, we are losing you.
An influx of visitors both on ferries, jets, and private aircraft that we need to be prepared for. Visitors are an important part of our economy, and their presence in the summer allows many Petersburg businesses to be open all year to serve members of the community. No, I didn't hear that. Finally, I also want to speak to the ability of KFSK to get some funding from the city, from the borough. I realize that we're listening to the borough over KFSK right now, and they're
Dave, can you hear me? This is Mayor Jensen. We're having a very hard time hearing you.
Okay, I'm not really sure why, but I'll do my best to try to make that better. I do want to speak to some funding at some level for KFSK. The important part in spreading the news of the borough throughout the community. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Berg. Okay, so I do see a few other people on the line, but they have not stated that they would like to speak. So if there is anyone else on the line that is now muted that would like to speak, please hit your 1 button and then your 4 button so the operator can see.
Dave. Does it appear any other people that are standing by would like to speak?
Mayor Jensen, it looks like we have David Beebe that would like to speak.
And David Beebe's line is open.
Mr. Mayor and members of the Assembly, my name is David Beebe, and just for a sound check, is this all right?
Yes, we hear you well. Thank you.
Okay. I want to congratulate the members of the Incident Command Team for doing what was necessary to keep Petersburg and consistent with being among the least affected states in the Union. Obviously, it has a great deal to do with our social isolation, small community, and the excellent capacities of our citizenry to respond to the best medical advice available. I'd like to give some background here. I was born into a Navy family. My father was an air traffic controlman on the aircraft carrier USS Independence during the Cuban Missile Crisis blockade. I can't help but wonder what would have happened if COVID-19 struck the USS Independence during the Cuban Missile Crisis, in the same way that the COVID-19 has struck the USS Theodore Roosevelt recently, with 1,000 members of its crew testing positive for COVID, and the fact that it was pulled out of service because of that. When I graduated from high school, I was forced by the draft to enlist, and I chose to be a surgical technician in the Navy during the Vietnam era. And I did that for 6 years, and for the next 12 years, I wore a surgical mask to make a living on surgical teams in all the major surgical services. I bring this personal history up because I was wearing a mask for the same reasons that everybody in Petersburg really needs to consider. We in the surgical team wear masks in respect for others. It's not really about ourselves. It's about understanding the consequences of not wearing masks. It has nothing to do with political or personal choices, or whether or not you have a different opinion than medical experts, or whether we deny science. It's a simple cause-effect relationship. So COVID is, it's a novel virus. We don't know a lot about it. However, we do know that it is an equal opportunity disease, and it will target the most vulnerable among us, as well as those who deny the validity of medical professionals and the scientific background in which they are represented. The tragedy is we already know the best way to deal with COVID. And the tragedy is America is now a world leader in deaths from COVID, precisely because there are many among us who choose not to believe in the science. As a matter of fact, third world countries are putting America to shame in its failure to protect the vulnerable and the deniers alike, because they are believing what their medical experts understand. Now, as a commercial fisherman for the last 3.5 decades in Petersburg, I urge Petersburg residents and hundreds of people in the fishing industry and tourist industry arriving that we need to understand a COVID outbreak could wreck many lives needlessly, as well as seriously cause a financial disaster in our coming season. So try, if you will, to understand what our veterans were willing to risk. They were willing to risk their personal lives for our own.
Mr. Beebe, Mr. Beebe, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to let you know you have about 30 seconds left.
Okay. And try to compare with whether we can make a small sacrifice to wear masks in enclosed public spaces, socially distancing, and following the best advice of our medical team professionals. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to this. And I hope that you will extend this COVID mandate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beebe. And we do have one more caller that would like to speak, and that is James Kerr, please.
And Mr. Kerr's line is open.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Assembly. I want to talk about 15E, the 2% increase. I believe this will show a good faith and willingness to move forward with contract negotiations. And I just wanted to speak about my department, the police department. As I look through some of the stuff, it's a lot of the borough departments are all underpaid, especially in the midpoint and the maximum range. And so a couple things I want to say is the Petersburg Police Department, the starting pay is somewhat comparable to other agencies, but as time goes on, the police department employees become grossly underpaid. Police officers and dispatchers require a substantial amount of training. Once officers and dispatchers are trained and given experience through time and position, this opens higher paying opportunities based on their level of experience. This is the experience the borough has invested into them through training and time on the job. Other agencies want to draw these employees to them because there are instant benefits by gaining this caliber of employee. Petersburg Borough should want to hold on to these employees and reward their employees with longevity pay increases. These pay increases would be offset by not having to invest into new employees' training due to turnover. This budget year alone, the Petersburg Police Department has $27,500 towards training of new employees through the Police Academy and the Corrections Academy. I believe if the Petersburg Police Department had competitive wages, we would keep current employees and draw other fully trained employees to the Petersburg Borough, which would support all the other departments as well. So just, again, I would like to voice my support for the 2%, as I believe this shows a good faith and willingness to move forward with negotiations.
Thank you, Mr. Kerr. If there are any other callers on the line that would like to speak, please hit the 1 and the 4 button.
Okay, are we seeing no other interest, Kirk Thompson?
It doesn't look like it, so I think we can move on.
Okay, so I would assume that no one wants to talk to the next item on the agenda as well, and that's persons to be heard on items unrelated to the agenda. If there's no one else on the phone line, I guess we'll move to item 9.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Go ahead, Member Tremblay.
I don't know if he's still unmuted to Mike with American Cruise Lines. I wanted to make sure that he was planning on... I have questions. It's nice to have... I didn't expect somebody from ATL to be on the phone. Are we going to be able to ask them questions on the discussion item in the later part of the agenda? Was that part of our plan?
No, not generally, but I'm sure we can email him. And
yeah. Okay.
we could discuss doing something like that at that time, reaching out to them, but yeah. So this was the part of the agenda to talk, on items related or unrelated. So it's going to be a lengthy meeting as is. So we'll just see how it all plays out. Okay, with that being said, we'll move to board, commission, and committee reports. That is item 9. There are none new reports there. Item 10, consent agenda. There's nothing under that item either. That brings us to 11, report of other officers. And that brings us to Parks and Recreation Department update. And that is going to be from Manager Giesbeck. So, Steve, if you would.
Thank you, sir. Parks and Rec is doing well, despite the challenges of trying to negotiate the pandemic impacts. Our staff are working with the incident command team in many ways and to help develop the approved plan to get Parks and Rec structures, parks, and again, the play structures reopened. Most of the staff has been helping on various pandemic tasks. Our landscape and maintenance folks continue to work on their parts of the operation, and we are making headway on getting various improvements and repairs completed. The security cameras are in place, the Wi-Fi is almost there, and the repairs to the HVAC and the heat exchangers, while delayed due to the pandemic, are in the process of being scheduled now. The software update for all of the controlling systems looks like it will occur in mid-June in coordination with the school, and we should have the HVAC and heat exchangers scheduled sometime in July or August once we can have that conversation with Ketchikan Mechanical. We're going to start bringing staff back to Parks and Rec over the next month or so to help with 4th of July and to start working on plans for reopening the full facility before school starts in the fall. I don't have a great idea yet on how to open the pool and the gym, but other communities are doing it, so we're going to start reaching out to them and make sure that their plans are going well before we jump in. But again, the goal is to have the pool and the gym open before school starts. Any plan we develop will be vetted by the incident command team, and we will make sure it follows any state and local mandates that are in place. I did complete a revised contract for the Viking Swim Club, which was sent to their president on March 6th, along with a new release form to be used by their participants that was vetted by our attorney. Once we hear back from them, this contract will come to the Assembly for approval before implementation. To my knowledge, we have not yet had anybody interested in serving on the reconstituted Parks and Rec Advisory Board, but I'm sure this is related to the pandemic. I am planning on starting the recruitment process for a new director in early August once things hopefully settle down a bit. The goal would be to have somebody in place by October 1st. And that's it, unless there's questions.
Are there any questions of the manager on the Parks and Rec? Okay, seeing none, that brings us to the mayor's report, which is fairly short. The Assembly appreciates the efforts made by Petersburg residents and current visitors to follow state directives and be respectful of each other. A link to all state directives and other COVID-19 information will be found on the Borough website at www.ci.petersburg.ak.gov. Click on the COVID-19 Information Hub box on the home page. There's been some small cruise ship visitor discussion that's been going on, I would say, for possibly the last month. And the Alaska Municipal League kind of started this dialogue, and it's been with managers and mayors from communities in southeast from Haines to Ketchikan. We've attended several of these small cruise ship visitations, and there were several of these meetings on small cruise ship visitations and how communities and the industry can work with the state to have procedures that would protect local communities and the visitors. Representatives from the cruise industry feel it is likely most visits this season will be canceled, but it was worthwhile continuing discussions to prepare for next year. The state and the industry want a set of unified rules and procedures for all ports. However, it is recognized that this may not be what every community wants. An AML committee may be developed to work on the issue and bring recommendations back to the state, the industry, and communities in the future. And we did have a letter from American Cruise Lines, and there was a response sent today. The letter was sent to the Harbor Department, and so the emergency operations team commander looked over the letter drafted by Mr. Tagabon from the Harbor Department, and that was sent today, I believe. And the manager looked at it as well, and it seems how it was a letter from American Cruise Lines to the Harbor. I felt it was, I just didn't see it was up in an assembly position to say send it or not. It was the emergency operations team, so that letter was sent. I'm sure we'll all get a copy of it. About a week ago at the last meeting with this group about small cruise ship visitors coming to town, we met as a community members, our leadership members, and then we met also with the industry, and they were going to give us a plan. The only plan we've seen so far was from American Cruise Lines, and that we'll discuss later. Anyway, it was kind of a quiet weekend, as we all noticed. Mayfest was a little bit different. I see some people still have the spirit, and I'd like to thank Carl Hageman for having the crew put up the flags at the end of Main Street. That kind of brightened things up a little bit, in my opinion. And that's all for that. And one more thing I'd like to reiterate, I mentioned it at the last meeting. June 1st will be my last meeting. I don't think it'll be the last meeting of the summer. It just depends on how the openings fall. So anyway, I will be staying in touch, though, with what's going on in the community. So with that being said, I would like to turn it over to the borough manager for his report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jody is working with the Alaska Municipal League and her peers to help develop possible uses of the CARES Act funding to offset expenses in the community. Been several meetings, and Jody's list actually was well received by AML, and they were very complimentary towards it. Department heads have been asked to prepare plans for opening to the public in some certain departments by June 15th. These plans will be reviewed by the Incident Command Team for any edits, and then I will meet with Debbie and the appropriate department heads to decide if we shall move forward. Currently, we are not considering changing anything at the fire station or the community center, gym and aquatics. This will be a phase 2 process. Stephanie, her staff, and Power and Light helped the school with some of the graduation activities, including the use of Outlook for pictures and hanging the senior banners throughout town. Thanks to everyone involved for making the 2020 graduates feel special. Depending upon the Assembly's vote on the letter of agreement with the union, the borough's negotiating team will work with the Assembly to develop the direction for negotiations with the union. As a reminder, without the LOA, the current contract expires on June 30th, 2020. Harbor staff is continuing with dock washing. They have defloat left to do in South Harbor. Then they will have all the floats done with power washing and removal of mold and algae off the floats. They will have to do some touch-up in areas to blast the fire hose to remove sand and seashells out of the cracks to keep the drainage clear. Registration for the library's summer reading program opens next week. It will be all ages program that runs online from May 26th through August 11th. The Community Reading Rally continues to be the most popular program the library's ever run, with over 460 registered readers and well over 500,000 minutes read. The program ends May 26th. Thanks to First Bank and Friends of the Petersburg Libraries for sponsoring the program. Sandy is working on staying current on the ever-changing state mandates, and her and Ryan are reviewing travel plans as they are submitted to the EOC. Hugely important part of the process to give people answers on their proposed travel and what is expected of them either coming and going. The fire department volunteers are no longer meeting the Alaska Airlines deplaning passengers to distribute and collect travel forms as it relates to state mandate 10. Big thank you to Amy Anderson, Ricky McKay, Jack Slott, and Margaret Reddy for their 5 weeks of airport duty. Staff in Community Development is working with the Incident Command Team, working on non-congregate shelter issues and updating and distributing information on the FEMA reimbursement and economic development. Molly is responding to requests for routine mapping and land information requests, and Joe is responding to building permit requests and other permits as needed. We're getting ready to update our grant application for Scow Bay, which is due to US DOT today. Small business grant programs are accepting applications for the sales tax rebate and PPP incentive grants to May 22nd. There's more information on the borough's website and resources for businesses impacted by COVID-19. The buried water transmission main from City Creek Dam to the treatment plant has become overgrown with trees that are becoming large enough to possibly impact the main with their root system. Staff is clearing this line to eliminate the risk. A progress meeting with Reed Brothers Construction will be occurring soon to plan for a late May start on the casino sewer project. This project will place sewer main in manholes from 3rd Street to 7th Street on Casino. Staff has reserved Thursdays for wood chipping and cleanup of the drop-off area in support of producing wood chips for the compost program. Most contributions are very appreciated. Signs have been ordered to make it clear what is and isn't acceptable to dump on 14th Street. The signs should also remove some of the confusion about where to dump. Justin has been training the other operators on our annual quality assurance testing that is required by EPA, and the wastewater staff is working on rebuilding one of our smaller pump stations on Marion Street. We're looking at the logistics of sending wastewater samples to a company that analyzes for COVID-19 in the wastewater. This is actually being done in Ketchikan. This type of testing may show us to what extent the virus exists in the community and offer a baseline for viral levels that could be compared with future samples to show increases or decreases in the virus locally. McMillan & Jacobs, which is the Blind Slough Hydro Project engineering firm, has been responding to questions in regard to the Blind Slough equipment procurement process. A recent discussion may result in extending the proposal development period into mid-July. Different scenarios for equipment configuration, design, and delivery are also being considered by the engineers. Power and Light deployed 30 more of the AMI meters in the North Harbor last week. As time allows, the full deployment of the single-phase meters will occur later this month. The 3-phase meters that are planned for the North Harbor have been the victim of a severe delay related to COVID-19. They should be shipped in May and deployed in June. Our staff successfully replaced a power pack on the 16-cylinder generator last week. One cylinder was in rough condition but was caught before we had a large failure. The entire machine is going to be under close monitoring after every extended run to make sure we address any rebuild needs. Sand pickup continues, grading and pothole repair as the weather permits. And thanks to the streets crew who resurfaced portions of 5th and Excel Streets where the failing chip seal was removed and the roads resurfaced with crushed asphalt until we can afford to do some more paving in the future. They also completed some storm drain repairs at the intersection of 7th and Haugen and repaired a defective sewer service connection for a nearby residence. And that's everything.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Are there any questions of the manager on his report?
I have a question, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thank you. Now, Steve, you mentioned that we're not doing the passenger travel forms up at the airport anymore. Is that something that we're not doing anymore because we don't have the people to do it, or is this something that the Incident Command Group decided we didn't need to do anymore?
It's probably a combination of things, and Carl might want to weigh in, but reality, that's a state form, and they weren't sharing it with us anyway. And with all the changes in the state rules when it comes to travel, that may have led towards that. But Carl, you on there?
Yes, I am.
Did I get even close to the right answer?
The mayor, well, it's pretty very close to that. The state actually came out with a clarification on that travel form last week of April, that indicated that they were not expecting anybody to hand out or collect forms at airports anymore, that they were pushing the airlines to announce the need to fill out an online version of that form to all passengers that were coming into the state from out of state. And with that information, we decided to stop disseminating that travel form. As Steve said, even though we were putting out the effort to try and get it in the hands of passengers, the state had no intention of sharing the information with the borough after they were collected. And furthermore, we were having a hard time, keeping the volunteer staffing going. The people that were named in Steve's report did a great job, and we have a lot of thanks for those folks, but it was getting to be a kind of a grind to get people up there.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions of the manager? Okay, I would like to add one thing to the mayor's report about the small cruise ship discussions that we've been having. I just want the Assembly and the public to know that there will be no decisions made on an official opinion from the Petersburg Borough until it gets vetted by the Borough Assembly. This is just mainly an information gathering procedure that we've been going through and trying to get ideas to ask the cruise industry or positions we thought the region of Southeast would require. And I guess this all hinges on what the state does with the 14-day mandatory quarantine as well. So anyway, I just wanted people to realize that this group that has been talking, they're not going to make any official decisions, and it's just basically input from different communities. And from the people on the phone conversation today, all of the other communities felt the same way. They would have to address it through their councils or assemblies. In fact, Ketchikan, I believe, is going to address it this Thursday. So if there's any questions, I'll try to answer them. If not, we'll just move forward on the agenda. Okay, I don't hear any questions, so that brings us to unfinished business. And ordinances for second reading. So the first ordinance is ordinance 2020-14. This is an ordinance amending Chapter 4.24, property tax, to change the payment due date for property taxes. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its second reading. So moved. Yeah, we can move and second it. Just for a brief explanation, this basically just changes the payment due date to allow for people to receive their PFDs before property tax, before the taxes that we do. So, any other discussion for the Assembly? Let's call the roll.
Randy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
And Chelsea?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, ordinance 2020-14 passes unanimously in its second reading. That brings us to ordinance 2020-15. This is an ordinance adopting the budget for fiscal year July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its second reading.
So moved.
Okay, I'll take one of those so moved as a second. Any discussion on the proposed budget? Let's start with Member Lynn. Let's go down the list here again. Member Lynn, do you have any comments on the budget during its second reading?
Just a question. I notice on the agenda there are some recommended motions, some changes to be made on it. How do you propose we do that? After the discussion, to make those motions and go one by one?
At any time, I imagine it would be an amendment to the motion, so they can be made at any time. I would think. Does that sound like the right approach, Clerk Thompson? That's kind of what I'm reading into it.
Yes, Mayor Jensen, it does.
Okay, with that, Mayor, I would entertain going through the 5 recommended changes, and I'll make the motion one by one, and then see where that goes, and then after that we can discuss. The first motion is recommended to remove the additional building maintenance position that was proposed in the fiscal year 2021 budget, and move the current building maintenance position back into Public Works. And that would save about $117,000.
Is there a second to that motion, that amendment?
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and a second to remove the recommended building maintenance position. Any discussion on this amendment? Clerk, call the roll.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so that amendment to the budget has passed unanimously, so that you can get to amended budget later in the process here. That position will not be in it. So,
I would move to, Mr. Mayor, I would move to add the Police Department number 56 SUV Patrol Unit to the motor pool replacement list in fiscal year 2021.
Is there a second? Second. Motion's been made with a second to recommend an amendment to add Police Department number 56 patrol unit to be replaced in this upcoming fiscal year. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Member Stanton Greger.
Thank you. Maybe if Steve or Carl or Chris is on the line today to explain to listening public why that had been requested. That's all.
Thank you, Member Stanton Greger. I have the same question. So, Carl or Chris, would that be Mr. Cotta? Explain that.
Mayor Jensen, it would. So I would ask Dave if he would please unmute Chris Cotta.
Thank you. That line is unmuted.
Okay, can everybody hear me all right?
Gotcha. I can.
Okay. Yeah, so number 56 is, we were planning to try and get a little more time out of that unit, but it has developed a problem recently that's going to be very expensive to fix. It's already been in the fleet 4 years. It has a little over 80,000 miles. It has been a more troublesome unit since we've had it. We've had a pretty high O&M cost for this rig compared to what we would expect from a normal vehicle. And so taking all those things into consideration, the high cost of repairs, going on $5,000 to fix the current problem with it, which is a coolant leak, and then the past O&M history, extensive history, the high mileage, and just also considering that patrol vehicles, typically you don't get more than 4 to 6 years out of them, at least here. We think all those factors kind of add up to recommend an earlier replacement than what we were originally planning. So that's what we're proposing here.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Cotta? So 80,000 miles, Chris, is how many miles do we normally get out of one of these vehicles, I guess, is one question. And another question would be if this has been a problematic vehicle for us, do we get any warranty benefits out of this? Or since we take care of our fleet ourselves, how does that work?
Well, the warranty question is a very interesting one. Recently, there have been some changes to Ford's dealer presence in Southeast, if you will. In the past, we bought a lot of Fords, and there was a dealership in Juneau, also one in Ketchikan, that provided, Ford authorized warranty service. In the past couple of years, those dealerships have closed. There aren't any new ones that replaced them. So we don't have a lot of good options for getting warranty service on Fords. There's one place in Ketchikan called All American Auto that does a little bit of working with Ford on warranty issues, but Ford is very difficult to work with if you are not a dealer. And so we did, at a couple different points, we tried to approach Ford about this vehicle, with the idea of trying to get it shipped somewhere like Seattle or perhaps Anchorage where there was a Ford dealer. Of course, there would be a lot of cost associated with that. We could not get any traction with Ford. They didn't want to talk to us. I called them personally several times, couldn't get anywhere. All American called on our behalf, couldn't get anywhere. So as a result, we're kind of taking another look at that brand and thinking that we will move in a different direction. Right now there are a couple of different brands that are serviced out of Juneau, with factory warranty support. Chevrolet is one of those. We have a lot of purchasing contracts that give us favorable pricing on Chevrolets. So we're making a move actually to go towards that brand because there is local support, and Ford does not have that right now. So that's kind of a long answer, but that's one reason this vehicle has been in the fleet so long with these numerous problems, is just it costs so much to send it out, and we could not get the factory to support us on it. As far as the 80,000 miles, there really isn't a set mileage that we would expect out of these things. Police service vehicles really take a beating around here. So 80,000 miles is a pretty good lifespan for one. We've seen them go higher than that. And we'd like to get more than that. But, 80,000 miles on the island, I mean, you know what that entails. It's not like 80,000 miles down south on the highway. So, the goal is always to get as much out of one as we can, but in this particular case, I think it's given what it can give with a reasonable cost factor, and so we need to change it out. Does that answer everybody's questions?
Anybody else have any questions about this proposed amendment to the budget? Okay, seeing none, will the clerk call the roll?
Jay?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
Randy?
No.
Taylor?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, this amendment to the budget passes with 5-2 vote, with myself, Mayor Jensen, and Member Moreau voting against it. So that will be a change to the budget in second reading when we get there. Member Lynn, are you going to read the motion for the third?
I will move to make revisions that were inadvertently excluded from the proposed budget in the electric and sanitation departments, and to correct an error in the dollar amount of the secure rural schools transfer out to the general fund.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and a second for this proposed amendment to the budget. So basically, I'd like to ask maybe Jody Tao. This is just basically a clerical correction then? Just a bookkeeping thing?
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Mayor. Actually, the electric department adjustment was just a quote that they got in after they had to submit the budget and realized that they under-budgeted that item. The other items were just missed and errors, and we're correcting them now.
Okay, is there a dollar value associated with this?
Yeah, so it's on page 8 of your packet. So it'll be, for the electric department, it'll be an increase of $18,000 to the power production service charges. In the sanitation budget on page 40, there'll be state PERS relief in the amount of $12,151. On page 40 of the sanitation budget, the machine and equipment is $32,800. And then secure all schools, the transfer out to the general fund is actually $550,000, not $500,000. That was in the budget for the first reading.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Are there any other questions? Will the clerk call the roll?
Bob?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay? Brandy?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the third amendment to the budget passes unanimously. The next recommended motion was recommended to add a special revenue fund to track and account for the CARES Act funds of $3,971,278 that the borough will receive. I'd entertain a motion. Member Lynn?
I move to entertain that motion, and I'll second. And if you did it, I'll second it.
I'll second it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, motion was made by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Nucci. It's hard to decipher who's making the motion and the seconds over the phone, but okay, discussion? Sounds like just a bookkeeping thing to me, so. Clerk, call the roll.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that proposed amendment to the budget passes, or just some language, or to start a new fund to track the money that CARES money we'll get from the federal government if the legislature does their job by Wednesday at midnight. Okay, the next recommended motion is recommended to reduce the fire department travel and training budget by $9,000 due to cancellation of fall events caused by COVID-19. Member Lynn?
So move. So move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to reduce that fire department travel. It sounds like the events won't be available, so it makes sense to me. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Taylor?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so those 5 amendments have passed, so that is what we are dealing with as a proposed budget for the second reading. Is there any comments or discussion on the budgets as amended?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Member Stanton Gregor.
Thank you. I would move to amend the budget to include monies to fulfill the request of KFSK at last year's funding, to restore it to their flat funding rate of last year.
Second.
So who seconded the motion?
Member Lynn did.
Okay, thank you, Member Lynn. Motion was made by Member Gregor, seconded by Member Lynn, to the proposed dollar amount by the administration to give the community service request to KFSK was wait a minute, let me back up, $26,933, and requested was $29,925 by KFSK. So that's the difference dollars that we're talking about. Discussion.
Yeah, can I read it up, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Thanks. I made that motion to amend there. For one, just because I value KFSK immensely and what they do. But two, they're facing a significant shortfall after Governor Dunleavy had almost defunded public broadcasting in Alaska, but with the promise that the CARES Act money could compensate for that. And right now they've come up short with that. It hasn't hasn't covered the shortfall that the state had. And as much as I'd like to give KFSK more money for what they do, I feel like I owe it to them as a citizen for what they're doing for us all year round, especially during this time, to help them keep their airwaves on and keep doing what they're doing so well. And I thought that was, for that dollar amount, it felt like the right move at this time. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on this proposed amendment to the budget? Clerk, call the roll.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that amendment passes unanimously. It's in the second reading. We have one more reading of the proposed budget, or as amended on the 1st of June. So are there is there any other discussion or proposed amendments to the 2021 budget?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Ritchie.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to amend the budget to remove $15,000 out of the Assembly travel and training budget. Originally, we have budgeted in there $26,500, and I'd like to see that fund drop down to $11,000. I don't expect us to... yeah, that's my motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Member Ritchie, seconded by Member Tremblay to reduce the 2021 travel and training budget for the Assembly. Any other discussion?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think with what we're dealing with the travel restrictions, we don't know what's happening from week to week, if not month to month, and I think we need to be, at least we have some money in there in case there's something that we really need to go do, but I think we can afford, if we're going to curtail our traveling, I think here's a spot that we can save some money. So that's what I'm thinking.
Okay, any other comment?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Member Lynn, I'm going to go the opposite direction. is that I think that the mandates or whatever we might have in the future will control any travel or anything else the Assembly does. I think with the situation we have now, and which I think we're going to likely get into with budget situations in the state, I would like to, my personal opinion is that we should leave the travel and training budget alone for now. I think that the situation itself will take care of whatever funds. In other words, if we can't travel, they're not going to be used. So why make that change? This is where I come from.
Any other input on this proposed amendment to reduce the travel and training budget for the Assembly by $11,000? Member Norheim.
So, with the proposed reduction, are there any meetings that we're planning to go to that are currently canceled that would reflect that, or like the fire meetings? Those are flat canceled, so that makes sense. Are there any that we were planning to go to that are canceled?
Not to my knowledge, unless the manager or the clerk have heard of something along those lines.
No, neither one of us have.
Okay. Any other?
I guess I'm Bob on this.
Any other comments? Well, seeing none, I'll put my input in. I'm along the same lines as Member Lynn. I think this will be self-regulating if the travel restrictions are still in place. But I don't see why we shouldn't budget for this. That doesn't necessarily mean we will spend it. Like last year, we were budgeted for a trip to Washington, D.C., and we didn't do it because we didn't see that it was necessary at the time. So that's my 2 cents. Any other input?
I have some.
Okay, go ahead, Member Tremblay.
To me, this is a matter of almost common sense, not so much what we'll be allowed to do in the future. I'm not anticipating much of a shift with regards to travel risk in the foreseeable future, and so I guess we'll see what changes, but there will be an inherent risk, and I see fewer people taking that risk from the Assembly, the better. So that's my reason why I support the budget reduction.
Any other discussion on this proposed amendment? Clerk, call the roll.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
No.
Jay?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
Taylor?
No.
Randy?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, that proposed amendment fails with a 4-3 vote with members Michie, Stanton, Drager, and Tremblay in support of it. Okay, with that amendment being discussed, is there any other discussion or proposed amendments to this year's budget? I've got a question for either the manager or the finance director, and this question was asked on the radio show today at noon by Joe Bicknicky about the budget, and I asked this question of the finance director in our work session we had, and I'm not sure the dollar amount out of our surplus from last year or the year before that we're using to balance this budget. I'm just wondering what the financial situation in the state, price of oil, the potential, unless the federal Congress changes the rules of the CARE Act, we won't be able to use the CARES money to replace the vetoes by Governor Dunleavy to offset the loss of the school bond indebtedness, as well as the revenue sharing and the community assistance. I just want, I'm wondering if this is a prudent budget to approve with potential loss of the revenue. We spend the surplus and then that's gone, and if we don't get money from the state, how do we propose to move forward, I guess is my question. Is there a plan?
Steve, do you want me to try to take this? And
I'm going to jump in. Hey, Jody, I'm going to say something, and then I'll turn the details over to you. So the first thing, Mayor, is going back to the budget policy document where it talks about how, when we end up with a surplus at the end of the year, we're basically, half of it goes into the property development fund and we move on. But we also set kind of a limit on our fund balances. And again, that's up to the Assembly. And we were clearly above what's normal. So in a sense, we're stockpiling money. So, I believe the concept behind it was to be able to lower the property taxes for folks and use some of that surplus to do so. Another big piece about it is, you mentioned the CARES Act. Jody's going through the process now of identifying what we can spend it on, and we're actually finding things that should help us out. An example, again, we have to verify this for sure, but it appears that money can be used to pay first responders' salaries during this process. So that would be police and fire for the period from March to the end of December, which is significant. So, in a sense, we take the money out of reserves to buy down the property tax rate for everybody, and then potentially that money is going to come right back, actually more than that, and go right back into the general fund when we're reimbursed through the CARES Act. So that's some of the thought process that went into this. Jody, please correct me anything I said wrong or add anything.
No, that's correct. And then with the amendment that the Assembly made tonight, instead of using $400,000 of surplus, we're actually drop that down to $260,000 of surplus. And that was the total surplus for fiscal year 19 was $730,000, I believe.
Okay, well, thank you for the explanation. That helps my thought process along. Just to add to the mix of information, the legislature reconvened today. They have until midnight on Wednesday, the end of their regular session, to come up with a plan how to, divvy up the CARES Act money. So we will have that information. Hopefully, they can make a decision, by their deadline Wednesday at midnight. We'll definitely, hopefully, have the information by our next meeting, June 1st. So thanks for your explanation and the amount of difference used out of our surplus. So thanks. Any other discussion on the budget as amended this evening?
One last thing, Mr. Mayor.
Member Stanton Beggar.
Yeah, I just I meant to comment on it earlier and I forgot. I wanted to thank Jody and Steve and everyone working on the budget in these challenging times to bring forth a budget that lowers property taxes for people. And I know it was a priority of the Finance Department, and I want to thank them for their efforts to create a balanced budget while lowering property taxes for taxpayers. Thank you.
Any other comments? Will the clerk call the roll?
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Art?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, ordinance 2020-15 as amended this evening for the budget for fiscal year July 1st, 2020 through June 30th of 2021 passes unanimously in its second reading. You have one more reading June 1st. Any public input would be appreciated if there's any concern from the public. Next item on the agenda for second reading is ordinance 2020-16. 16. This is an ordinance amending Title II, Elections, of the Petersburg Borough Code to provide an election by mail at the discretion of the Assembly. I'd entertain a motion to approve this ordinance in a second reading.
So moved.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
The motions are made and seconded to approve this ordinance to allow for special electronic elections. And this doesn't mean that we will be having special elections. It just gives the Assembly the availability to do that if there's still a shelter at home issue, or if there's an outbreak, or whatever. If there's any situation, we will be allowed to do the election by mail. What is the lead-up time for this, Clerk Thompson? I couldn't remember today, and I was kind of curious. How much time do we need before the election day to decide that we're going to do it in this manner?
I believe that it will need to be decided in July whether we're going to have a by-mail election. And the thing that takes the longest time is the printing of all the envelopes and things that need to be done. Our printer said 3 to 4 weeks to get all the printing done and get them to us.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on this ordinance? Clerk, call the roll.
Mark?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2020-17 passes unanimously in its second reading. Would anybody like to take a 5-minute break before we continue with new business?
Yes.
Okay, let's reconvene at 7:30. It is 7:25-ish. 7:24. We'll see you all back at 7:30.
Chelsea's here.
Chelsea's here.
So are we still down one?
I'm here.
Are we all ready? Sounds like we're back. We're ready. Okay. New business, item 15. First item under new business this evening is ordinance 2020-17. This is an emergency ordinance amending Borough Code Chapter 3.72 to provide for civil emergency provisions. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. If adopted, the emergency ordinance 2020-17 will extend the civil emergency provisions which are set to expire from emergency ordinance 2020-08 on May 18th. This emergency ordinance will be effective immediately upon adoption, which takes one reading only, and will continue in effect for 60 days unless sooner repealed. So, is there any discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, could we ask Carl to give the public a just an explanation what this does?
Sure. Mr. Hagerman, are you available?
Yes, I am, Mr. Mayor. To answer the question. So this emergency ordinance, of course, was put in place by the Assembly 60 days ago to address the need for government to act a little more nimbly and to take actions as appropriate in consideration of the pandemic that we were facing. The pandemic is not over yet. We have made great strides locally to control it and keep our numbers very low, something that the entire community should be proud of. But in light of seasonal workforce coming into Petersburg very soon and already happening, the risk of an outbreak is very real, and so this emergency ordinance will continue the ability of the Assembly to act nimbly and take action if needed to protect our local population. The ordinance basically it is established the authority for the borough to address the civil emergency that has gone on, and includes the ability to make an emergency declaration, which has already happened, and then the state followed suit with their own emergency declaration that we're operating under now. Excuse me. The ordinance allows the borough to issue orders to protect public safety and health, and also allows for enforcement of those orders through citations and fines.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Any other discussion on this ordinance? It's basically just extending what we did 60 days ago.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Member Stanton-Gregor.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I'll definitely be voting yes for this. I think Director Hagerman identified the really key reasons why I think it's important. We are moving into a time of seasonal workforce, and having the local government to, I think, use the word nimbly, being able to act quickly in the event we need to. The beauty of it is we don't need to right now. Things feel really good in terms of life returning to a good sense of normal, and I really hope that we continue along the trajectory. In the event it does not, we need to be able to act quickly, and this is I think just a great precautionary, almost like an insurance policy, keeping this in place as things move forward. And I want to thank Carl and his team for all their efforts. Thank you.
Any other input or discussion from other Assembly members?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Member Norheim?
I just wanted to say that I'll be reluctantly voting for this. I understand some people don't want it out there, but the Assembly is going to be missing some members throughout the summer, and I think letting the incident commander respond as quickly as is needed without having full Assembly available all the time is probably a good idea. I know Dillingham just had a positive case, just one, but it snowballs from there rather quickly sometimes, even after the quarantine that they put them through. So, I like to give everybody as much freedom as I can, but with this particular one, we'll just hold on to it just for a little bit more. It's already a pretty crappy year anyways.
Okay, thank you, Member Norheim. Any other input?
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Mayor. As far as I'm aware, this emergency order doesn't take away anybody's freedoms at all, or am I missing something on that? I mean, there's a legitimate point of clarification. I want to know in which way, if any, it does.
Well, I don't know if it's right to be questioning another Assembly member's motives or their position on things, but
I'm not questioning his motives. I believe it was an honest statement on his part. I just wanted to make sure I understood if I was missing something.
Well, I don't know if we should get into this back and forth, but it just there are some people that we're aware of that think their rights are being taken away. So I don't know. That's just a group of people's opinions. Member Norheim, would you like to respond if you're not? I don't know if you have to.
Oh, it's fine. It's just the fines and the jail time thing. I mean, I don't see it as too big of a deal to me, but I am aware that some people do, and that's all I was stating. But and that's why I'll vote for it reluctantly. But it's a good idea for now. Just 60 more days. Just get us through all the seasonal workers and whatnot. I don't think it's going to be the end of the world here.
Thank you for that clarification, Member Norheim. I appreciate it.
Any other comments or assembly or discussion? I know there's been a couple of emails or communications I got today. People thought, yes, do it, extend it, and no, don't extend it. But I kind of agree with, I think it's good to keep in place for another 60 days. Hopefully we don't have to impose any more mandates or restrictions on people, and hopefully we'll have a clean summer health-wise. So I will be voting for this. Any other comments? Clerk, call the roll.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, ordinance 2020 passes unanimously and will be in effect as soon as signed tomorrow. Next item under new business is ordinance 2020-18, an ordinance adjusting the fiscal year 2020 budget for known changes. Ordinance 2020-18 will provide for a new special revenue fund for the first distribution of CARES Act funding to the borough in the amount of $2,216,502. I would entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 2020-18.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on ordinance 2020-18? Clerk, call the roll.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, ordinance 2020-18 passes unanimously. That brings us to item C under new business, resolution 2020-04. This is a resolution authorizing a loan application to the Alaska Clean Water Fund to assist in the funding improvements to the wastewater collection system. I entertain a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. If approved, this resolution will authorize the Borough's wastewater department to apply for a loan increase from the Alaska Clean Water Fund of $194,695 to assist in the completion of the Scow Bay Pump Station 1 upgrade project. The Assembly previously adopted supplemental budget ordinance 2019-13, which transferred $194,695 from the wastewater fund in order to allow award of the Scow Bay Pump Station 1 upgrade project, with the understanding that the wastewater department would request a loan increase to replace the wastewater funds. If the $194,695 loan increase is approved by the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation, the total loan amount for the Scow Bay Pump Station 1 upgrade project will be $744,695. I just thought I would read that for clarification to the listening public. Any other comments on Resolution 2020-04?
Bob?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that resolution authorizing a loan application, passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is item D, 20-216 is the item number, and it's extension of the Petersburg Borough Health Mandate number 5, Borough Harbor Facilities, cruise ship docking and disembarkment. I would entertain a motion to approve this mandate extension.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I'll just read the action item here. EOC Incident Commander Hagerman recommends the extension of Borough Public Health Mandate number 5, which prohibits small cruise vessels from utilizing Borough Harbor facilities without the express approval of the Borough Public Health official. Mandate 5 is set to expire on May 31st, 2020, and Hagerman is recommending extension of the mandate until June 30th of 2020. So, any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Member Michi.
Yeah, thank you. I had just a couple questions about how this is written, and I don't know who wants to answer it or whatever, but, on the first line there, under the heading, it talks about the CDC's no-sail order has been extended, banning cruise ships from continued operations. I don't understand what that continued operations means. Is that something for us to be concerned about, or is that, I don't know how that fits in there, and I don't know who gets to answer that one.
I think that might be for the bigger ships, but Carl, can you explain that question? Answer the question, I guess.
Yes, through the mayor. The CDC's no-sail order did reflect orders towards larger ships, and so in part the mandate was written previously to address the smaller boats that we get in Petersburg, and it's just it's kind of a clarification statement that was used in the initial mandate.
Does that answer your question, Member Michi?
Yes, it does. And, one of the other questions I had, Mr. Mayor, is how did we come up with the 25 passenger number?
Carl? Can you answer
the mayor? Yes, I can. So the 25 passenger, we talked to the Harbor Department, who of course is very involved with having discussions with the smaller cruise ships that come through Petersburg, and we wanted to capture the boats that we do get, and so 25 was a number of passengers, a capacity number that would capture 100% of the boats that are scheduled to come into Petersburg.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Member Michi, does that answer the question?
Sure, it does. Mr. Mayor, the other question I had is, so that if these boats, ships, I guess, aren't coming to Petersburg, are they just going from one spot and then bypassing Petersburg, or, for me, I understand the importance of the visitor industry in Petersburg, and I don't want to get the impression out there that I'm not supportive of the visitor industry. I think right now it's a little bit too soon to kind of throw the doors open and have 140 or 50 people kind of wandering down Main Street. I know there are plans in place, but I would hope that if this passes, that perhaps the radio station or something could do a call-in like they did last week when they had the processors on the phone, kind of explaining what they're doing to make sure that the communities that they're visiting are safe, as well as their customers are safe. I think we're doing a really good job, and we're being very responsible about keeping the community safe. And right now, I think it's a little bit too soon. I think we'll be revisiting this, and again, towards the end of June. And I'm supportive of the visitor industry, but I do have some questions for them. And it sounded like at the beginning there, Assemblymember Tremblay had some questions as well. So hopefully we can get them answered here. A few of them answered this evening. Thank you.
Okay, Member Meachie. I would like to respond to Member Meachie, if I could, real quick, Member Tremblay. This group that has been meeting with the Alaska Municipal League and trying to get a response from the small cruise ship industry has not been getting a large response back from them. The group kind of put together just 13 rough ideas that we would like to see addressed by the cruise industry in Southeast Alaska, these small cruise ships, all the way from who's responsible if you come to town. Do you have a positive case on your ship? They have to disembark your ship. Do you, as a business, the cruise ship I'm talking about, are you responsible for getting that person to a facility that can handle them if they're sick? If there's transportation fees, would you be willing to cover that? And just the only plan that I've seen in writing so far is the one from America Cruise Lines, and that's what this little group of Nils Andreas and Alaska Municipal League is trying to get, is a consensus of the region on what we feel safe with, and we started the conversation trying to get the cruise industry, the small cruise ships involved, so we can work collaboratively and come up with a plan that would hopefully work. So so there's a lot of people, Member Beachy, that are in the same position you are, having questions and not fully getting the answers. So I hope that explains a little bit of what we've been finding out as a group in Southeast. But Member Tremblay?
Yeah, I just think that until the industry starts to be more proactive in planning with the incident command team and laying out their theoretical, I understand that they are hesitant to try to make plans since they don't know if we would let them come, but if they can't give us on-the-ground theoreticals about what their involvement in town would be like and what their potential footprint could be, then I think we need to continue to extend this mandate and keep pushing for further dialogue. I think the only one that has been proactively saying that they're going to come is American Cruise Lines, so I know we'll be talking about them specifically later, but so I'll be in support of this, and hopefully we can get some further dialogue going. I'm grateful that we've done the work with the Visitor Industry Task Group already, laying out just how important the visitor industry is to town. And so I know it's hard for all the businesses that rely on visitors and the money that they spend to be imagining a summer without them, but we need to be thinking about the overall health of the community, and until we get that dialogue going, actually going, not just sporadic emails once a week or so, ongoing dialogue, then I think we need to be proceeding with caution.
I totally agree, and that's, I'm glad you're in on that conversation today. That group of members from all over Southeast, from what I took out of the conversation, was the same position that Member Tremblay has. We need to see a plan, and we need to vet the plan and make sure it'll work, and we need to do it safely for the population. And then again, the state's mandate, 14 days mandatory quarantine if you come from out of state, is going to be addressed on the 2nd of June, if not sooner. So that might give us some indication on what's going to happen. So any other comments on this extension of Mandate 5 until June 30th? Clerk, call the roll.
Mark?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that mandate passed unanimously. We're starting to get a little clipping noise, and I don't know if Dave notices that on his end, our operator, but and I'm not sure why it's happening, but I can still wake everybody out. Debbie, you're getting kind of in and out on your conversation a little bit there. So anyway, that brings us to item E under new business. And this is extension of the current Petersburg Municipal Employees Association collective bargaining agreement to December 31st, 2020, and authorization of a 2% wage increase effective July 1st, 2020. I entertain a motion to approve this extension.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so moved and seconded. Discussion.
Mr. Mayor?
Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to amend this letter of agreement. The first amendment I want to put in there is under the first therefore, number 1. I want to change that second line there where it says until December 31st, 2020. I'd like to change that to June 30th, 2021. Now I have another amendment. Do you want to just vote on this one, or do you want to hear them both?
You need to do one amendment at a time and get a second for it. Otherwise, it'll get confusing. For me, anyway. So is there a second to that motion by Member Mucci, and it's to underneath the action, I believe, in the second paragraph where it says it's to expire December 31st, 2020. He wants to change that date to 2021. What was the month and the day, Member Mucci?
Mr. Mayor, it's June 30th, 2021.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Motion's been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Tremblay to extend the terms of this agreement to expire June 30th of 2021 instead of December 30th of 2020. I have a question for the manager. Is there any reason specifically why you picked December 31st, 2020, or does extension affect anything? Are you hoping to have the negotiations done?
Yeah, I think that was just the case through the mayor. I mean, to answer your question, we were hoping to have it done by then. So extending it to June 30th gives us more time, gives the union more time. And again, I mean, hopefully we can get it done before then and have a contract that, if this amendment passes, it becomes effective July 1st of 2021.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Any other discussion on this proposed amendment?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Member Lynn.
Yes, I have two questions. One is for Member Mucci. Why do you want to move it to that date? And second of all, won't that put us back into the same situation we're in now? It seems to me the sooner we can continue that negotiation, the better off we are.
Through the mayor, one of the things, and maybe I've not done a great job explaining this, our hope is to start negotiating really right away. The problem is, on a contract like this, when you get to the tricky parts, it's usually economic, and the union's not going to want to agree to any changes to the contract until we come to an agreement on the economic side of it. So we're going to work with them on some of the less controversial pieces, articles that have no changes or very small changes that we can come to agreement on, and we're hoping to be able to do that, starting soon. Once the Assembly gives us direction here and the membership votes on it. So we hope to be able to work with their team and get some of those stuff done as part of the contract negotiation. And again, remember, this is something normal. We should have been in contract negotiations with these folks back in March or April, and unfortunately the COVID pandemic has put a wrinkle in that. So we're going to hope to try to catch up by doing some stuff on the phone or Zoom on things that are non-controversial. leaving the tougher pieces of this negotiation for when we can actually get together. Again, extending it to 2021, in effect, probably has very little impact, but I have not had the chance to talk to the union about that either. But anyway, hope that makes some sense.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm still confused, I guess, a little bit. If we agree on the 2%, if the Assembly would agree on a 2%, that to me would be the first year of that contract. And so what we'd be talking about, and maybe I'm not understanding, what we'd be talking about then is 2 more years. So we've already then agreed on the first year of it with no changes in the contract. I'm confused, I guess. I'm not understanding.
Mr. Mayor?
Member Nucci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess it's to respond to Member Lynn's kind of questions, but, for me, I'm going to have a real difficult time voting on a 3-year contract at this point right now. I mean, the community and the state's kind of in turmoil. Nobody really knows what's going to be happening next month or, in 6 months from now. And, I'm comfortable in voting on a contract extension that takes it to June 30th, 2021, that 2%. But the other part of that amendment that we can talk a little bit about and haven't made yet, but like Steve said, I'd like to see the negotiations start immediately. Let's get this thing started. We were already going to, if this was to pass, we were already going to have this 2% increase was going to go to June 30th, 2021. But I want to make sure that we have plenty of time to kind of see what's coming here. I mean, we have no idea what's going on statewide. I just want to take it really slow. I mean, I have the utmost respect for the PMEA members, but I honestly, it's hard for me to vote. If we end up going on a 3-year contract here, it's going to be real difficult for me to support that. And I definitely right now can support this 2% increase that goes until June 30th, 2021, and starting negotiations immediately. But it's unforeseen territory here, and I don't want to negotiate a 3-year contract without knowing what's going on. We might be able to have it done by the end of December, but I don't want to put any deadlines for it. I think, with the 2% increase, we're already going to, that December 31st number, that's just the end of the year, but why not just say that we're going to do that 2% increase?
Yes? I think we understand what your position is on it.
Okay.
So right now we're just voting on the amendment to change the date from December 31st, 2020 to extend it out to June 30th, 2021, if it passes. So is there any other discussion on this amendment? Clerk, call the roll on this amendment with the date change.
Jay?
No.
Bob?
No.
Mark?
No.
Randy?
No.
Taylor?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes. Okay, the proposed amendment fails with a 3-4 vote with members Norheim, Tremblay, and Nucci in favor, and the other 4 assembly members against. And that brings us back to the original proposed extension for the municipal employees, including a 2% raise. Any other discussion? Okay, I have a question of clarification. This also includes department heads and all of the PMEA employees, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so is there any other discussion on this proposal as presented to us?
Mr. Mayor? Go ahead.
Mr. Tremblay first.
That was Brandy.
Sorry.
Yeah, as much as I would like to give everyone a raise, I just think that in this time, when, there's businesses that are struggling to keep open, I just have a hard time putting out any more money, especially when payroll is already our biggest expense. And that goes further than just this negotiations that goes into department heads, so I can't support this.
Any other discussion or comments from assembly members?
Mr. Mayor.
Member Stan Gregory and Member Ritchie? I think that's who I recognize.
Yeah, that was me. Thank you. I'm simply, I'll put it simply, I'm going to vote yes for this or some version of it if an amendment is made, hopefully. And there's a pretty simple reason why, the last contract dragged on almost 18 months, and contract negotiations, the longer they go, can get more and more contentious. These employees are our friends and neighbors, and it's better business to get these things done efficiently. And the primary talking points that our previous negotiator, John Hogo, has talked about was, when we get into this in good faith. That's the only way to bargain is in good faith. And I understand where Steve's coming from right now, that not an ideal time to do negotiations, and you can't sit face to face and wrangle over some potentially small details, potentially some big ones. Look, I think 2% is almost like a placeholder right now, and it's an act of good faith, saying, listen, our negotiators have told us for several contracts now, you're underpaying your employees. And the wage study that they had presented to us last week, it bore that out. Some areas more than others, some areas less. And when we get into those negotiations, because I agree with Member Morrell, there isn't, money is tight right now for people, and you can't squeeze water from a rock. But we have budgeted for those 2% right now, and it's an act of good faith to get this negotiation started, and that is what before us. It seems like a reasonable way to begin in these unreasonable times. That is all. Thank you.
Okay, Member Ritchie, you had another comment?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. So, if this letter of agreement passes, is the intent of the city manager or the borough's negotiating team to start negotiations immediately? Thank you.
Through the mayor. Go ahead, sir.
Go ahead, Steve.
Okay. Not always up to me, but my intention would be yes, we would start negotiations on some of the items that we hope to get easy agreement with. I cannot speak for the union. Clearly, they're the other side of this, and if they aren't ready to begin negotiating, then that also drives the question, the answer.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments by any other assembly members?
Really quick.
Yeah.
Member Tremblay and then Member Norheim.
Yeah, I'll be voting to support this. I just wanted to remind the public that this 2% increase, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Jody or Steve, but I believe this was covered with the savings from the health insurance rate increase that did not come. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, yes, you are correct. Through the great efforts of our employees and staff, we ended up with a very good experience rating and really good renewal rate, and came in at 0.4% instead of 15%.
Thank you. And I believe a part of that was the employees themselves finding the healthcare plan that did bring them savings. So, so in the spirit of that and with those savings in mind, that pays for the 2% increase, I'll be voting to support this.
Member Norheim.
Yeah, along those same lines. You reward people for good work. They just did good work, so they should be rewarded. I understand we don't want to be paying out more, especially right now. But it also, for me personally, I always try to do the best for my workers, and I guess right now the borough's kind of like my workers. You know, I'm referring to as a captain on a boat. But I found it a little annoying that we were so much underpaying our employees compared to the other communities around just off the report. I don't know. It's just me and my how I feel. It really irritated me. I understand we were saving money, but it's kind of like a slap in the face. Like, really? Huh. Well, and that's I didn't like it, so I'll be voting for this.
Okay, Member Lynn, you have a comment, or if not?
No comment.
Okay, thank you, Member Lynn. On the radio show today, Joe McNicky asked what, Member Mitchell I thought of this, and at that time I've said, the state of affairs financially with the state and the money that the federal government's creating, I guess is the word I would use, to help people get through this pandemic crisis, they call it. That's fine, but I'm not saying the employees don't deserve a raise. I just don't think this is the time to be giving a raise when we don't know. I mean, sure, we have a surplus now that we're using for the budget, but what happens if that goes away? We have CARES money coming from the state. That's going to be gone at some point. So to vote on this 2% is just part of an extension, and it won't go away. I think the value of this was the dollar value, if I remember right, was like $124,000 a year. It would cost the municipality. I can't support this at this time. Not to say that I wouldn't support it when I saw the whole package as it gets negotiated out. So that's my input. Is there any other comments before I ask for the roll call?
Just a question, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Member Norham.
So if say, we come up short in money next year and we're unable to afford this, we can fire workers, correct? Or is this contract like they are locked in and we can't do that?
Through the mayor?
Yeah, if you answer that.
Sure. Through the mayor. No, our contract includes, and I wouldn't call them fired, but I understand what you're saying. We can lay employees off. Yeah. There's a process for that is negotiated as part of a contract. And it's in our current contract, and it will remain in the contract as, last resort, but it is definitely there.
And I agree. Last resort, yes. I just wanted to make sure that was there.
Yeah,
thank you.
I was going to say that.
Do you have the input? Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I was just going to say one of the things we do periodically is we hold off filling positions, which is generally my preferred way to handle that situation. But again, we can lay people off if necessary.
Any other comments? Okay, if not, clerk call the roll, please.
Jay?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
Brandy?
No.
Taylor?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, this extension of the current contract and a 2% raise will be effective July 1st, 2020, with members Moreau and Mayor Jensen opposed. It was a 5-2 vote. Next item on the agenda under new business was a letter of support for GCI's application for easement to remove and relocate a fiber optic cable in Stikine Straits. I'd entertain a motion to send this letter of support.
So moved.
I'll consider one of those so moved as a second. So it's been moved and seconded. This was at the request of Chief CEO Atkinson, Trey Atkinson, requested that we send this letter, and it just sounds like GCI has a cable, fiber optic cable overlaying our power lines, and they want to remove it before we have to replace our power lines.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I may. Yes, that fiber optics cable overlays all our cables that are there. And what this does is we've been negotiating, SEPA has been negotiating with them to pull that cable, because as part of this, we have to remove the damaged cable and lay another cable in there. Whether they're going to put it back in or not, I don't know, but it cannot, that GCI's cable is junior to SEPA's cable, so it does have to be removed, and I do appreciate that we sent a letter in support.
Any other comments on the letter? Clerk, call the roll.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that's from a unanimous vote of approval to send a letter supporting the removal of the fiber optic cable. That brings us to item G, South Harbor Navigation Improvements Design Phase Project Partnership Agreement. I'd entertain a motion to approve this agreement.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve this for navigation improvements, this design phase project, and it's a partnership agreement. And the Borough Harbor Department requests approval to enter into a project partnership agreement with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which will commit the Borough to pay $125,500, or 10% of the funds needed for this design. The balance of the project design costs will be paid with federal funds as authorized under Section 107 of the River and Harbor Act of 1960 as amended. The Harbor Department has budgeted for this 10% match. Is there any discussion? This is just for the design phase of the project.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just a quick question. And that is what kind of time frame are they looking at to complete the design? Do we know?
Steve, can you answer that? I'm not sure that Glorianne's on the call here.
She's not. I'm not sure on their timetable on the design, to be honest with you. The project's been pushed back a couple of times because of some kind of negotiating with EPA and the dredge spoils. So I think that's kind of thrown them for a little bit of a loop. So I don't know how long it'll take to get the design done. We can get an answer to that and get that back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion on this harbor improvement design phase? Hearing none, clerk call the roll.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move forward with that partnership agreement for the design. Next item under new business is H, use of cellular phone during a public meeting policy. I would entertain a motion to discuss and potentially have the clerk work on a policy.
Yep.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? I asked to have this on the agenda. It just seems like, especially more now during these electronic or phone call meetings, and I seem to be getting a lot more input, myself included. In fact, I just turned my phone off, getting texts and emails in regards to business we're discussing at hand here. And so the cellular phone use during the meeting policy, as the clerk has it presented here, is acceptable to me. What does the rest of the Assembly, how do they feel on this topic? Do they think it's even necessary to have a policy, or what's everybody's input?
Mr. Mayor, I also think we need to have a policy, because I think we need to all be operating with the same set of information. If somebody's sitting there texting over other information or other questions to be asked, I don't think that's reasonable. So I think that there should be a policy.
Any other input?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, please.
Member Sandberger.
Thank you, sir. I admit I'm undecided right now, because as outlined in this policy, it says, based on Municipal Code 3.08.150B, all remarks from persons desiring to address the Borough Assembly during a public meeting shall be addressed to the Assembly as a body, not to an individual Assembly member. It's written in the policy there. And so, to a certain extent, it feels redundant because it's already in place, and it's a matter of public records. I feel comfortable saying it's like members know, I made an honest mistake during the meeting. During that, I don't see it as a big deal. It's a good learning moment for all of us on there, and making a second policy to go with already is stated in Borough Code or Municipal Code, and wrestling with the necessity of it. So I of course agree with the premise that we should be dealing with the information given to everybody, of course.
Okay, thank you, members. And kind of background noise here. Unmuted and has a conversation going. Any other input? But we have some background noise coming from somebody's phone that must not be muted. It sounds like in someone's living room or something, perhaps. Okay, now it's gone. Any other comment on this potential policy?
Mr. Mayor?
Member Ritchie.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess we can have a policy. We went through a rough patch. People, we had no way of enforcing some of the health mandates that we went forward with, and now we're going to put a policy in place that I have no idea how you're going to, or who's going to enforce that. I would just hope that, we would just turn off our cell phone or put it in another room and just, kind of be an adult about it and just not use it or put it away for a couple of hours. We can do a policy, but I'm not sure who's going to enforce it. So, thank you.
Any other input?
Just a quick comment.
Okay, Member Trumby.
Yeah, as somebody without a landline, while we're in the world of conference calls, it is a matter of just the due diligence of going into a do not disturb that still allows me to stay connected to the phone, which is something I can try to remember to do. I guess, again, there's no enforcement, but it is a good mindfulness practice for us all. So if it's already something that's covered, then I'm not sure I see the need for it, but it's a good conversation for us to even be having as far as protocol.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And Debbie, maybe you can clarify this. I'm not so sure that there is any policy or in the code that actually specifies cell phone use. That's kind of what I was trying to get at, because it seems like it happens, and as far as policing it, it's on the honor system when we're on the phone calls like this, but if you're in when we get back to the assembly chambers, then it would probably be up to the presiding officer to, if you see someone texting or answering on their phone back and forth, that would probably be up to them to do that. But if a person gets an emergency message during a meeting, I would hope that they would ask for a brief at ease and go respond to it. I mean, that would be acceptable. But I do think it would be a good idea to have some kind of a policy in place. That's just my opinion on it. So if there's no other comment, I guess what we would be voting on is to cellular phone policy that the clerk has drafted up here, and then just maybe, if nothing else, as a reminder to us to not be responding to emails and texts during a meeting when we should be paying more attention to business. So, any other input?
This would also cover sending thank you letters to people, like responding to emails, thank you for your input. That would be considered unacceptable as well.
I would hope that you wouldn't be taking input from people in a meeting via electronics, because you're the only one that has that information. And if they're giving you information, you should technically share that information with everybody on the assembly, so we all are working off the same slate.
Yes, I was more referencing emails that we all get, and then using time, say, when people are speaking to the assembly, to be sending thank you letters in response to emails to the assembly. So thank you for your input, instead of paying attention to the speaker. But I'm sure that's covered under absolutely.
Sure, that should be done during the meeting, but that's just my opinion. So anyway, any other discussion? Clerk call the roll on this policy. And that's all it is a policy. It's not a law. It's not a rule. It's just a policy that hopefully we'll follow. I mean, in the legislature, certain bodies, if you have your phone rings during the meeting, or if you're using your phone, you get a fine. It's like $5, but it's more of an embarrassment thing than anything, I think. So, clerk call the roll.
Taylor?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Jeff?
Sure.
Randy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes. Okay. That moves us to communications. There are communications that will just be entered into the record. There were 3 that we received in time. 11th was the deadline to be on this agenda. 1 from KFSK, 1 from Susan Borough, and 1 from Dennis Rogers. Those are all on our website, or just go to the agenda, and you could, if the public wants to read them, they're here. We won't read the 3 entries. Any other communications that the Assembly has received that they'd like to share? Okay, and I don't have any new communications. Assembly discussion items. American Cruise Lines is asking to dock the American Constellation in Peterborough June 21st and June 29th and partake in shore excursions. And we touched on this topic quite a bit in the meeting, and as much as I thought this discussion would entail, but any other, I know Member Tremblay had some thoughts about this discussion. Member Tremblay, do you want to comment?
Yeah, so the PowerPoint was emailed to all of us today, and I was really interested in the way that they presented themselves to us with at this point, 1 month's notice, and we've had much more time in conversation with processors, and it was rather interesting to me that one of the slides was almost jingoistic in nature, the way it referred to, it's an all-American company, it's all-American crew, which I guess is important for emergency evacuation purposes. And then they got to the American passenger point, and, I think that was the thing that was meant to reassure me, and it was actually a point of caution. Like, if it was a boatload of Australians, like, they're friendly and they have their COVID crisis under control. So that would actually make me more comfortable. So I'm hoping that we can keep dialogue going with them and talk about what they're planning on doing, and hopefully we can think about building capacity on the ground level for just the logistics involved. And I'm coming at this as somebody that does shoreside support for a cruise ship and works retail, and thinking of logistically how we could handle that many people. We're already seeing multiple cases at this point of seafood processors who, employees who are going through their quarantine period and coming out of it now testing positive, re-entering the quarantine period along with their coworkers, which, is just showing that the plan that the processors have been working on for months now is working, but it is also still illuminating positive cases. So, and their guidelines are much stricter than the ones that ACL lined out for us. So I'm grateful that we passed the mandate, and I do hope that this just does keep the dialogue going with this company and all the companies as they all think about what the future holds. But anyway, that's just what struck me, and also the fact that Skagway, Wrangell, all the communities that were on the call today were sharing the note of caution and also sharing the overall difficulty in communication with the company. And so that to me was kind of a pretty big red flag for moving forward. If that doesn't change, I'd be really disappointed, because we need it to. We need to have a proactive, productive dialogue going with the with the emergency teams, and bringing in more partners on the ground level, like with the retailers, for example. How would we feel comfortable making sure that our stores stay safe for community members while still, bringing in the desperately needed income? Would that be possible? And that discussion's really only just getting started as we figure out how to open up safely for the public at large. Already, that's still a question we're navigating right now, let alone with all the potential other factors of cruise ship passengers. So those are just a few of my thoughts. I'm interested in anyone else's if they read the PowerPoint.
Any other input from the assembly members?
Mr. Mayor?
Member Michi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hope that Mike, who, if he was listening to the meeting, but I would hope that our incident command folks at least have a dialogue with American Cruise Line and tell them, while we appreciate them wanting to come here, some of what our concerns were. And I think we're all concerned about getting a bunch of people walking through town, and we want to be pretty confident that whoever is bringing them to town has taken all the precautions that they can to make sure that the community does stay safe. I'd encourage KFSK and the Petersburg Pilot to reach out to those American Cruise Lines, since that's the one we're really talking about now, and have them explain to the community what they're trying to do and how they're going to mitigate any...
No, she doesn't. I not do the dog on the couch.
Anyway, I guess the mute button doesn't work. But anyway, I just encourage the local radio station and the newspaper to kind of reach out to the American Cruise Line. I think we need the visitor industry in town to help us with some of our economic needs, but we have to be safe for the whole community. So, yep, thank you.
Well, that's pretty much, what the letter said that I mentioned earlier that was sent off by the Harbor today at the request of the emergency operations team, our commander, and that's, I didn't see any problem, saying, yeah, go for it and send it. We had one drafted that Steve was working on in a response to this, but it would have had to go before the Assembly. This one from the Harbor was a response directly from American Cruise Lines to the Harbor. And that is what this group that's been working with AML is trying to get to, is get the industry to answer the questions. And these questions are coming from communities from Ketchikan. And they're concerned that the communities aren't getting enough information to feel comfortable with how these ships would handle certain situations. And we gave them a list of, I believe, 13 concerns, and I think they answered 5 or 6 of them, is what Neil said today. So we're working on it, and I'm glad the community started the dialogue, and now we're getting some response. But we talked to the industry a little over a week ago and asked them for a plan. There's a group that supports this size vessel, and this group that AML is working with has gotten a response yet. So hopefully we'll get a better dialogue, since there's plans to come here in a month. And with the mandates in place that the state has, and our mandate 5, we're going to have to jump over some hurdles to get in. And that's the way I see it. Any other comments on this discussion item? Are there? There's one other discussion item that Member Lynn wanted to talk about, I believe about the CARES money for daycare, and can you just open up that conversation, Member Lynn?
Yes, I would. Thank you. I was reading the letter from the Children's Center asking for funds and so forth, and I thought this would be relatively easy to do. But so I need to set a little background for you, is that and I'll talk about all our nonprofit daycare centers here, when they closed, and they had to close, then there was a while before those people got on unemployment, and there was a little bit of funds picked up. When there was not enough money that they had to be able to pay utilities, insurance, and so forth on their facilities, the Petersburg Foundation came back and funded them to pay some of those funds. They put in for some CARE Act funds, but they don't know yet whether they're going to be able to get them. They've also, applied to reopen the 1st of June. The state requirements, I won't get into all the details, but the state requirements are such that they can only essentially have half of the kids they have had before, because of the requirements and the spacing and so forth. But the state also required all the teachers they had before. The long and the short of that is they don't have it. It isn't enough money to keep the lights on, pay the bills. They've got a problem. So, and they've got a very strong cash deficit. So I thought, well, this would be kind of easy to solve. And so then I got talking about the CARES Act money, the distribution of the CARES Act money. I got talking then to some of our staff and at AML. I got talking about the distribution of that to nonprofits and so forth. What I came out of that with is that I think I was originally dealing with just the daycare centers and thinking about that, but the issue is much bigger. The issue is all, in my mind, first of all, is all nonprofits, because the CARES Act money that comes to us can also be used by nonprofits. And I was originally thinking that we would deal just with the daycare centers, but the issue is bigger. The issue is all nonprofits. And I think we as a borough need a framework of are we going to put money into nonprofits? If we do, how it can be used, and how would it be distributed and so forth. And what's going to happen is folks are going to come to us if we don't do this, folks will come to us on a one-to-one, asking for funds, and we absolutely need to have, I think, a framework. Where the Assembly also needs to agree on what amount of funds, if any, we would use for nonprofits. Is it $300,000? Is it $500,000? And then the criteria for giving it out, and then what could be used for. And I really believe that needs to be done very quickly. And I think that Debbie looks at there's possibility of a special meeting, and I really think that framework needs to come before the Assembly sooner than later. I'll add one other item here, and then I'll open it up for discussion and questions. I also think that looking at since the businesses need to open up, and there needs to be daycare in the community, and I'm not arguing where, what, so forth, but I think that we need to take some of amount, I don't know, I'm looking at $20,000, $30,000 of general fund money to put into a pool to be used for nonprofits daycare, that money could be used. And I'm not saying which one, I'm not saying how, but based on the set of criteria it's given out. My understanding is that that money can then be backstopped with some CARES Act money at a later date. But right now, we don't know. There's way too many questions to be asked. But these people, our folks in town need daycare. And what I was trying to do was to come up with some kind of a policy where we could help out immediately, however that is, and then backstop it later with CARES Act money. But I needed both Liz's and Jody's and the managers' help to build some kind of a framework, some kind of a plan of how we're going to go about this and what we're going to do. And with that, I'll just leave it open for questions.
Any other comments on this discussion item?
Sounds great to me, Bob. And thank you for bringing it to us, and I hope I concur. Thank you. I have a
Mr. Mayor.
Member Wall, did you have a comment? And then Member Mucci?
Yeah, yes, I do.
And then, sorry, Member Mucci.
So, what I'd like to say is that, I understand the need for child care, actually more than a lot of people. That being said, the child care facility, the nonprofit one in town, there was another privately owned business in town, child care facility in town that stayed open. They've actually, in this time, expanded. They're in the same situation. They're running under the same rules, the same regulations. They have had the same walls that they're up against, and they figured it out. And I appreciate that. And no, I understand that everybody's having a difficult time right now. I just don't understand why one business that was an actual business that has more expenses is able to figure it out, and another one hasn't been, and yet we want to basically pay for them to open their doors back up when there was no real need to close them to begin with. And that's all I have to say.
Any other discussion? Member Mucci, input?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm not going to speak to what Member Lynn is talking about, but, I appreciate people figuring stuff out and making it work. I mean, I think there's a lot of merit to that. But if we have other businesses that are struggling in town, I think, this is a good opportunity for maybe the child care center that's got it figured out. Maybe we can get together with them and see what's working for them. I'm not trying to be in competition with them, but if we're going to reopen businesses in town and we want to do it in an orderly way, we need the workforce to have a place to safely leave their kids while they're at work. I'm not about the handouts there. I just want to make sure that if we're going to get folks back to work, they need to have a place to put their kid. If the other outfit has more room, then maybe we can encourage folks up there. But I mean, if any other businesses was asking for help in town, I think we would be doing what we could to help out. And it's not about handouts. It's about getting this place back in working order. And that's one of the steps that we're going to need to take, is figuring out what people are going to do for daycare in town. So I commend Bob Member Lynn for bringing it up. Thanks a lot, Member Lynn.
Okay, thank you. Any Member Stan Gregor or anybody, any other assembly members have any input?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, just a brief. I like the concept of your idea, Member Lynn, a lot. Obviously there's most of the details are unknown right now. But a nonprofit daycare center, as a small business owner, for-profit, nonprofit, are really apples to oranges in terms of a whole lot of different things. And for nonprofit daycare center that was, taking steps to try to ensure the safety of our kids and families in town, I'm really willing to entertain a dialogue on how we can help that business get back on their feet, because as everyone here has mentioned, we need, even in the best days, there's a shortage of childcare in this town when everyone's working. So we can do we can do a CARES money to help facilitate that. I'm on board for it. So thanks for bringing it to our attention, Bob.
Mr. Mayor, just one item there is that I expanded that to talk about all our nonprofits too in town. That plan needs to, whatever the framework of the plan is, if we're going to have a set of criteria to get him back on, as Member Mucci says, I agree with him, but it needs to be common. Everybody needs to be on follow the same criteria. Is all I'm asking for.
I think you mentioned Liz. I'm assuming you meant Liz Cabrera, and TDC has been trying to help non-essential businesses out with funding mechanisms and some loans, I believe, for businesses and whatnot. So maybe if some of this CARES Act is available to be used in the same fashion, that would be good to know. And it sounds like you've talked with some of the staff about that, and potentially some of that money can be used, that $3 million or whatever it is we're supposed to get. And as long as I would be willing to discuss that situation in the future, if the legislature approves the expenditure of that money and it gets dispersed to the communities. And I sure hope that they can do that by their deadline Wednesday at midnight. So we should have more information there, soon, if we're going to get the money soon or not. So, and I don't know your point about taking money out of the general fund. Maybe that's one resource for the funds, but maybe we could also, being repaid by the CARES Act money if we get it, and if that's allowed, or else maybe PDC can expand into it a little bit. So it is, we need to look at every mechanism we can use to help to get the economy, open safely and get people back to work and being able to have their kids taken care of, and other nonprofits potentially helped along the way as well. So, thanks for listening.
Okay, just one last thing. Steve, would it be possible to have a framework or a draft of something that we could look at in the special meeting if we have it?
Through the mayor. Actually,
go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, sir. Actually, that's already in progress. The only reason it hasn't been more universally put out is because AML is sponsoring a meeting on Thursday to talk about CARES Act and nonprofits and daycares and so on. So several of us in the staff are going to attend that meeting. We'll know more. Liz has already drawn up a pretty good framework for stuff to look at, and we're just waiting to make sure we've learned everything there is to learn before something is rolled out. So the Incident Command Team has been all over this. Just been waiting for the right information to get through and verification. Sounds like we'll have more of that come towards the end of this week, and hopefully that will meet your needs.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then I guess when that comes out, we can decide if we need a special meeting or if we can wait another 8 days till June 1st and have it be part of that meeting. So, anyway, there's no other discussion items. That brings us to Assembly member comments. Are there any comments from Assembly members that they would like to share?
That's a good one.
Member Truman.
Yeah, so this is in relation to the voting by mail that we passed for ourselves. The State Attorney General has said that he is not planning on having vote by mail for either the primary in August, the party primaries, or the November election. And the primary one makes sense to me because you have to have a special, decide which party you're getting and all that. Plus it's summer, so if we have to have it in person, it could be held outside. But I think it's unsafe to rely on a healthy fall at this point. So I'd like to ask Clerk Thompson to draft a letter asking him to reconsider for the November election, having that be a vote by mail. I would like for that to be an item on the next agenda.
Got it,
so
thank
just
you.
a heads up before my email. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, yes, Mr. Ritchie, sorry, my mute was on. Any other comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, I just wanted to remind the community that high school graduation is coming up on May 26th, and this year's seniors, we're all pretty proud of them, but they kind of got the short end of the stick here with the pandemic stuff going on, and I just want to encourage the community to kind of get out and support them when the graduation comes around. Maybe be somewhere in your car on the parade line and do all the social distancing and stuff, but I just want to say congratulations to the high school graduates and whatever the community can do to get out and show their appreciation. I'm very happy for them, and whatever I can do to help out, I think I'm going to do that. So thank you very much.
Any other Assembly members have comments they would like to add? Hearing none, are there any recognitions?
Yes.
Go ahead.
This is I would like to thank the Community Foundation for their COVID-related rolling applications that are happening for nonprofits. So far, they've given money to support Mountain View Manor Food Services, Salvation Army, Petersburg Indian Association, Lighthouse Assembly of God, Petersburg Mental Health Services, and the Petersburg Children's Center. And that's for housing placement, food vouchers, direct meals, and food pantry. And so thank you to all those organizations for the work that they're doing, the Community Foundation for their work. And I also want to remind members of nonprofits that if you are doing anything related to COVID response, that they are encouraging applications. And so if you are listening and you are working on something that is related, now is a good time to contact the Community Foundation, Petersburg Community Foundation, and learn more about their application. So thank you to everyone involved in those groups.
Any other recognitions? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
And all that does conclude the Assembly meeting for May 18th, 2020. We thank you very much for your participation, and I ask you please disconnect your lines.